Welcome. Namaste. Welcome to Satsang. Thanks for being here. It's always a blessing. What a life, huh? So interesting. It's got all sorts of nooks and crannies and directions and possibilities and potential and mystery and ins and outs. And most of that is made up in the mind. That's what I wanted to explore today. I've had the experience in my life that I think I've mentioned here before, whether some of you were here or not, but most of my life was spent quite of a state of angst, just trying to figure out where I belong, how I belong, how I could make sure that I belong, and I could avoid more betrayals and more judgment, and a sense of not being understood, or all the things that can make us feel frightened with the fact of, oh damn, this is gonna get me kicked out of the club, the humanity club. I'm not going to be loved. I'm not going to be accepted. What feels true for me is not being received or understood in the world. And there's a wonderful quote by, I think it's Krishnamurti, that says, "It is no measure of one's well-being to be well-adjusted to a profoundly sick society." We're trying to belong. What are we trying to belong to? I was trying to belong to the asleep collective ego body. That's what I was trying to belong to. And so we're all born into a world of betrayal to some degree. But the self-betrayal, that's what I was experiencing. I think most of us experience is a sense of self-betrayal. Here I am feeling this sense of love or beauty or preciousness or isness or life, this aliveness. And yet when it's not being matched in the outside world, I'm going to start modifying it and tweaking it and trying to create it or shape it in such a way that maybe this messed up, illusion that most everyone is in, that it'll match with that. And that's the suffering. And that just became too much. So many years ago, while doing a lot of my own personal development work, which was primarily around trying to disentangle the narrative, the story that I told about myself, I wasn't yet on the path of discovering the truth of self prior to this narrative. I was just trying to disentangle the narrative. And in that, I found there was a certain group that I belonged to. We'd meet about 4 times a year. And we'd do some really deep work and spend the whole night, stay up all night long and explore and discover and wail and moan and cry and let go and release. And go, and discover again. And then, go back to my life. And 1 day, 2 days, a week, whatever it was, the narrative would take over again. And so one part of the journey for me was, I remember during one of the experiences thinking, what if I actually chose to allow this knowing that I'm experiencing right now to be? What if I actually just chose to allow it to be and not say, okay, well, this is interesting and it's probably true. I'm going to go back into my life and see if it's true. Because what am I going to test it against? The illusion. I'm going to test it by pasting Facebook posts and saying, here it is, and seeing how many people like it to see whether it's true or not. So I just said, what if I just actually started to allow this? And at the same time, I was working with a young woman who has a beautiful teacher who has an ashram in India and then comes to the United States and travels quite a bit. Um, and she had been with this teacher for a long time. And she was expressing how she felt like she needed to go back to India and spend more time in the ashram, and it was going to be a financial burden. It was disrupting a lot of things, but she felt she had almost like no other choice. Right? I'm out of sorts again. I'm lost again. I need to go back. And we talked about it. How long have you been with this teacher? Oh, years. What if you actually, you've learned pretty much so much. I mean, you've learned so much. She's helped you discover so much. Yes, she has. So do you really need to go back? Or might you just tap into and sit with and be devoted to what she's already taught you? And that sense of not going back to God over and over and over again and saying, hey, tugging, hey, excuse me, tell me again. Tell me again. At some level, we devote ourselves to a discipline, to a practice, to a knowing, to a way of knowing. Because anything a teacher is doing is just pointing us toward how to be in the truth. They're never saying, nobody can give you the truth. Nobody can give us the truth. They can just keep pointing to it, and then it's up to us to what degree we want to devote ourselves or align ourselves with a truth that seems like it is beyond our grasp, is beyond our potential. So, in going through that work, there was a loosening of the narrative, the story that I was telling myself about myself. But I was still attached to the narrative. So I was still attached to, if I can create a better story, if I can create a better narrative, I'll be all right. It just wouldn't ever stabilize. I'd get it for a while, and then the story would be good, the narrative would be good, and then not, because it's always changing, constantly changing. So then the next revelation, the next opening, the next moment of stopping, the next moment of stopping was when it really landed. And it was through inquiry, it was through following my teachers who were saying, you cannot know the truth of being prior to your narrative, beyond your narrative, the eternal nature, the unchanging nature of self. You cannot know that without sincere and devoted investigation. To really look at what is going on, at what is the nature of the illusion and what is beyond it. It just isn't going to typically pop for you, open up. It does for some people. Beautiful. They have this amazing awakening. One of my teachers, Sat Shri, had an awakening. He didn't know what the heck was going on. He had to then go find teachers to say, what's happening? I feel completely connected and one with everything, and there is no longer a, whatever his name was before that, there's no longer a Steve here. What's happening? So yeah, that can happen for some. For most of us, it goes the other way around, where we recognize that Steve isn't the whole story, and how do I get beyond it? So the next moment of stopping was the recognizing and really sitting with and feeling into the insanity of navigating my entire world, making all of my choices based on a narrative that was running in my head. And where did it come from? I created it. No more real than just telling you a story that I just make up about something. So that's what I want to explore today, is this idea that to point us toward, first of all, what is this I that most people are identifying with as self. So I want to talk about devotion today. I want to talk about practice, disciplines. One of the most profound or revealing disciplines that we can do in a meditation is to sit and look for ourselves. How many people do that in their life, right? How many people throughout an entire life ever take even one moment, let alone moment after moment after moment after moment after moment, to break the habit of identifying with this narrative in our mind? Most people will never do that once, let alone the hundreds of times it may take to break the habit of looking at this story in our head and calling it me. So, to sit, so just right now, just close your eyes for a moment. Follow your breath into the body. Let the body just relax. And with curiosity, this is not an efforting. It's not a test. It's not a get it right or get it wrong. It's just a curious exploration that you can do. And ask, inquire, investigate. I seem to have this sense of me. Where is that? What is that? Is it the body? Here I am. I look in the mirror. I see me. There's me. That's me. Is that really the full nature? Is that what makes up me? Is that what is me? Is that my aliveness? This aliveness I feel in life. The aliveness. Is that the body? And we start to recognize that no, it's not. We can feel it in the body. The body's a beautiful receptive antenna for feeling the aliveness. But does it generate the aliveness? The isness, the preciousness of life? And let's hope not, because this body will go. It's temporary. Anything that is temporary is not us. So, if we start to investigate truly in our sitting, so I'm not the body, the question remains, where am I? This thing I call me. Where does it live? And we start to recognize that, kind of cut to the chase here, it's a story. This is science is discovering this more and more. They're looking, they're saying, you got 100 billion little synapses and neurons in the mind that are constantly firing, and they are constantly creating and recreating a narrative that's taking all the past and all the stories and all the things you've told yourself in the past, and it's creating a story of self, a narrative of self. And then we have an experience in the conditional world, and we test it against our narrative to see whether it supports or threatens or validates the narrative. So really feel into the insanity, the trouble, the trap of being completely identified with an ongoing, ever-changing, always shifting narrative that is basically bad programming from the get-go. And then we have an experience in life, and we run the new data through the bad programming and see what it spits out. And whatever it spits out, yes, you are unworthy. Yes, you do need to be afraid. Whatever it spits out as a conclusion was just run through a bad program. And then it adds that new data to the narrative, to the bad programming. So this is a beautiful place to start to go, wow. That can't be the truth, the wholeness, the essence, the eternal nature of me, because that too will go away. And yet I will still exist. When the body's gone, when this mind that is, this computer that is churning out this narrative is done, I, an essence, a wholeness, a pure, an unchanging, eternal nature of self will continue to exist. So I can't be the mind. That can't be who I am. And maybe I want to be done utilizing that narrative and just trying to get it to be a better narrative, a cleaner narrative to tell me who I am. So feel in this moment into the nature of that experience, of that dynamic is a bubble. It's an individuated bubble. It is a very, very small story in our minds, and that's who we believe we are, and that's what gets us into all manner of trouble. Imagine in this moment dropping down into the like 4 feet under the surface of the ocean. Imagine yourself just being a droplet of water in the ocean, trying to maintain your dropletness, trying to maintain and name yourself as I'm a droplet, I'm this droplet, I'm different than that droplet. And my droplet has to be put together in a certain way so it belongs in this collection of droplets. And how limiting that is. And imagine letting go of the dropletness. Letting go. The construct, the image, the narrative, the story. What might you discover? What might be there when you let that go and you become the ocean? So, that is one practice. That is one practice. And again, and I'm going to be on this today, I don't know of any other way but for honest inquiry and devoted, disciplined inquiry into the truth of being, to be free of the narrative. Because it's a strong habit. And when we start to break that habit of referencing ourselves through the story and feeling into what's beyond the story, so that's the next inquiry, that's the next investigation. Okay, so if I'm not the narrative, if that's something I made up, what am I? What's the essence? What's the nature of being? And the mind can't answer it. So think of the narrative as a veil. We keep running up into it, and the habit is to say, oh, that's me, yes, that's me, those are my fears, those are my doubts, those are my loves, those are my joys, Those are the ways that I've manufactured to be in the world. And we keep running up into it, and then we stop there. Typically, we live our lives that way. And it's a veil. It's keeping us from knowing the eternal nature of itself. So, in my journey, through a devotion and discipline, and to that moment when I was sitting on my deck at my home, and I went, this is crazy. I'm not going to do this anymore. There has to be another way of being than to keep referencing this narrative and trying to get it to behave, and trying to get it cleaner, better. So, disciplines of inquiry, of investigation, within stillness, reading, watching, listening to truth, immersing myself with truth from this teacher, from that guide, from that resource, feeling into what's calling me today. So I take a bath 4 or 5 nights a week. If I have dinner, if I watch a movie or something of that nature, by 8:30, 9 o'clock, I'm done. And I go and I run a bath. I light some candles, and I open my laptop and put it on the edge of the tub, not plugged in. I don't want that much of a shock to my system. And I see who shows up. You know, I've got my YouTube channel now, it knows me.
Right.
It knows when I'm not interested. You know, America's Funniest Home Videos is not what it brings up. It brings up Rupert Spira and Adyashanti and Gangaji and Muji and Nisargadatta. Thank you, Nisargadatta. And all manner of different teachers that can help guide for where I am in the moment. I just listen. It's kind of like being, when we really listen to ourselves, when we're still and quiet enough, our body will tell us what to eat, what it wants nourishment for. So the same thing, this devotion to truth, to the divine, is saying, thank you. I've gotten, the narrative has stopped so much now that it takes a while. It just takes a while to loosen and stop and release and relax and stop being the habit of self. And for the faith in this other emergent nature to blossom, to be fragrant. And in that space, I can now listen and say, okay, who do I want to hear tonight? And immersing myself in that truth, immersing myself in that, oh, that's right. Oh, that's right, there it is. Oh, that feels good. Oh, that feels right, that feels lovely. Oh, okay. And then to practice and to come out of the bath and sit. And just allow it to keep washing over me. So immerse yourselves in truth. Immerse yourselves in that which feels beautiful and resonant. Not to the ego, not to the narrative, but to that place that you start to discover beyond the narrative when you do the inquiry into, wait a minute, if this isn't who I really am, the story that keeps running, that keeps reprogramming itself, if that's not who I am, if I put that aside, what do I start to experience? Do that on a regular basis, and then let truth co-conspire with that experience that you start to have. And we discover, of course, we hear this all the time, but we have the actual experience, the direct experience of, what I've always been looking for is who I already am. And the only thing that was getting in the way was my addiction to this narrative. And why was I addicted to the narrative? Because I didn't have anything else. Because I didn't have a discipline, a devotion to another truth. So that's all I had. Some of us are fortunate enough to be able to either not have such a screwed up narrative from the beginning, or to be able to release that enough and replace it with a healthier narrative. We've done enough personal development work, we've done enough self-love work, we've done enough work in trying to disentangle the shitty narrative and replace it, and allow a more healthy narrative. But it's still a narrative. It's still not the truth of who we are. It's just a saying, oh, good, whew, I've got a better construct now. So one of the questions is, what do you want? What do you want? Most people do not honestly want truth. Because I've seen it again and again and again. Mm-hmm. I want to be free. Do you really want to be free? I really want to be free. Okay, here's an opportunity. Empty. Empty of everything you've ever thought you are. Break the habit of this, constantly referring to, going back to an idea of self. See the ridiculousness of that, and in the emptiness, see what shows up. And I'm noticing it doesn't just show up from, I've been talking about it as when the ideas of self are released, the truth of self like awakens, and the experience now is that it's not awakening here. It's just when the narrative stops, I'm swimming in it. It's just, what's the isness of self? What's the isness of being when I'm no longer constricted to the bubble that I've created of who I am, the droplet, when that's just not there. I can walk through the world and be in the world and relate and just feel love and just feel connection, just feel the moment of isness with everything, because it's not being run through a program anymore. And most people aren't willing to do the work. Mm. And I hesitate to say it that way because it sounds daunting then. But hesitant to stop doing life the way they always have. Because initially, most people's experience is when I truly empty and stop the narrative, there's not an automatic hallelujah of, oh! Mm-hmm. It's like initially shows up as a moment, a spark, a glimpse, and then we lose it. And then it comes again and again. With practice, with discipline, it just becomes, this is life. Life is no longer run through this bubble. There's no bubble. It's a story, it's an illusion, it's a narrative, it's something we made up. And you finally just get to a point and say, I'm done. I'm done living in this bubble of me. And initially there's an emptiness. Mm-hmm. And that feels really uncomfortable. And I've said it before in satsang, but it's worth remembering, because we say it again and again because this is my practice. I sit every day and just have and remember the emptiness and what is it really and what is it not. And when the emptiness presents and the ego says, I don't know how I will be in the world. I don't know how to act without this narrative. We have to learn how to endure that and be with it long enough and not go, shit, shit, all right, let me just go back to the old way of doing things. I mean, that's the, okay, I did this meditation, it was kind of nice, and I feel a little bit more relaxed, but can I go back to the way that I've always done things? Can I go back to the narrative? It's taken years for me to break that narrative. But in so doing, I'm blown away by that I can actually go through a day and not feel any of my old fears. That I can go through a day and I can put out a newsletter and not be addicted anymore to having to go see how many people opened it and how many people clicked on what, and therefore am I valid?
Yeah.
There's a truth, there's a love, there's a aliveness that bubbles through me, that moves through me, that I've allowed to be present because I've dropped the container, the small image of self. And that is just so beautiful. There's no need anymore for any validation. What a blessing it is to walk through my day and just be. It will not come without breaking the idea that you are the story that you're running in your head. And that breaking of that habit will not come without discipline and devotion and practice of deep inquiry and honest investigation. And most people start to investigate into it, and they go, and their narrative starts to spin a story about it and saying, oh, that's right, I just need to learn to love myself more. You know, the self you're trying to love, what you're saying in that is, I need to learn to love myself more. What you're saying in that is, I need to have a more loving narrative about I need to love my story. I need to have a more loving story about myself. That's what we're saying. That's bullshit. It's valuable. It's valuable as a step along the way, but it's just not the freedom. So that's what I'm finally landing in, is this is the only thing that's moving through me. This is the only love that moves through me, is there's an awakened sense of freedom, and it just wants to keep awakening itself everywhere it looks. So if anyone shows up and says, hey, something's here, something's alive in me that says there's something greater than this story I'm telling about myself, then that's the love for me, is to show up in that space. But it used to be showing up in that space and going, God, I hope this goes well. I, the narrative, hopes this goes well. Because the narrative says, because when it doesn't, I will not belong. And it will hurt. That's the droplet. When the droplet becomes the ocean, it'll hurt. Who cares? Okay, it's not flowing there. Maybe it'll flow over here. There's no more person. And this is the hard thing. There's no more person to take it so personally. Who's the person? Right? This is what we discovered. Who's the person? It's the narrative. It's the story. That's the person. If you're not that, then you are the ocean. There's no person to take it personally anymore. But it's not going to come from just reading a book or just coming to satsang or even just listening to teachers and truth and immersing yourself in that. It comes through the practice. It comes through the discipline. It comes through the intentional sitting and investigation, honest investigation. What is beyond this veil that drops of who I've always thought I am? And what you're seeking isn't ahead of you. What you're seeking isn't ahead of you. It's behind you. It's always been there. It was always there. Never went away. It's not going to arrive. You're not going to get to it. It's already present. Patience is necessary. Devotion is necessary. And clarity about what you really want. Do you want to be free? To be who you already are and always have been. So life is just less of an effort. Imagine that, life not being an effort. It only becomes an effort when the conditional world doesn't match our narrative or threatens it. So when we burst the bubble, I am not just this. We recognize ourselves as that. I am. This is the I am. Nothing after I am. I am this, or I am that, or I am. You could say I am that, which is the everythingness. But this is when Moses asked God, what are you? I am that I am. No bubble, no construct, no limits. I just am. So, what does this mean in our lives? I'm curious to see what comes alive for you, or what shifts, what moves, what perspective shifts in regards to what does this mean to you as you move through and progress and expand in this life as a human being who has this narrative and is something beyond the narrative. How are you navigating that? How do you want to navigate that? What does devotion feel like? Mean? What are you willing to devote to? And of course, we can do anything we want. You don't have to devote. You don't have to do anything. It's just what feels alive in you. That's really the question. So, what feels alive in you from this perspective? What enlivens or opens up?
Being the awareness without a story. That's what's exciting for me. just being that awareness and being aware of it, and has no attachments, has no preferences, it has no pain from the past, it doesn't remember any hurts or grievances, and that's a beautiful place to be. And I'm starting to be in it a lot more, and just being aware of that awareness. And even if there's a thought of, oh, I should be more like this, or there's this subtle family pressure, where as I'm going deeper and deeper and deeper into this, they've always known I've been on this path, but it's always like, when are you going to get over that?
Mm.
When is that going to be done and you get back to life, the way we live life? You've been on that path for a while, so, when is it going to be done? And then you just live like us again. And it's like, no, you don't get it. Like, don't expect me to conform to your way of living in order to gain some, figmentary acceptance from you. You can judge me or accept me, it's your choice, but I'm going to be what I'm going to be. And, who you think you know and who you think you love, this personality is going to die. It's not going to be, you're going to look at the same body and think that you know this person inside. And so there has been, just a little bit of conflict there, because every time there's a new baby born in the Phoenix, Gilbert area, all my family's down there, and, I go down and, it's like, there's this, when are you going to get married with Julie? When are you going to have kids? When are you going to be like us? What are you doing up there in Sedona? Just see all these pictures of meditation and, flute playing in the canyons and, all these spiritual practices and spiritual people. But when are you going to get over that? So that's been interesting.
So when you meet it, I'm feeling part of what you're saying, because they've got their narrative of you too. So I hear you in this beautiful transition of meeting that experience, that condition of life, less and less as your narrative, because your narrative would struggle with it. Your narrative would be, why isn't this better? And I want you to see me, and I want you to. But when that's just gone, and you're just the isness, is there any? What are they meeting? What is their narrative or their projection meeting? It's just meeting isness.
Yeah. Falling on deaf ears.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's just this little tiny, like, oh yeah, they'd like me more if I did this, or yeah, we'd have more to relate to if I had a family like theirs, and we could have our kids play together, and they could see that I had a normal life up here in Sedona. So it's interesting. I'm just looking at that and just letting it dissolve and just letting it be what it is, just a thought, just a narrative.
So the letting it be what it is, the narrative still does that for a while. The story of self says, I am learning to let it be what it is. But when it ultimately, when it really loosens, there is no longer an I that says, I'm learning to let it be as it is. Does that make sense? When the I really does fully drop away and we completely abide in the truth of our nature, there is no longer an I would be more comfortable, or I'm learning to let it be what it is. It's just a natural state. There is no longer an I to effort to let it be what it is.
It just is.
It just is. Yeah. That's the freedom.
Yeah, it is freeing. I find it's an escape. We deal with this world, and when I can go home and get back to me, it's just peace. It's just isness.
Right. So if the discipline and the devotion is to deepen the isness, you can't deepen the isness, it already is.
Right.
But your allowing of the veil lifting more and more and more, so that the isness just is, then that's the practice, right? So that then when you do go out into the world, it's less of a struggle, it's less of a shock.
Less of a distraction
Thank you, that's a
to our
perfect word.
isness.
Oh, I like that. Say that again.
It's less of a distraction to our business when we go out in the world.
Perfect. I should have just said that from the very beginning. We're so distracted from our isness. That's
It's
beautiful.
true. It is true.
So true.
We can all relate.
Mm.
This world is very distracting. And the narrative is hard to break, as you said. Detangle. I liked how you put that.
Mhm.
So I would wonder if, because families can be tricky.
Yes.
Families, although as a mother,
Mhm.
I deeply love my sons. And the more I know me,
Mhm.
or whatever, lose me or know me, the more love I feel toward them.
Uh-huh.
And the more they love me in return.
That's beautiful.
Mhm.
So I just think families can be tricky because in our mind, maybe they wrote our narrative.
Yeah, I think.
Absolutely. Yeah.
They were
I
a big,
know.
They were a big part of the story.
Yeah,
Yes.
they are.
And so ultimately, it seems that, let's see, it doesn't have to be that narrative that you can
Mhm.
open to them and feel the love.
Think of it as a walled village. And you've all built this village together. And you're in it. And you've got a certain storyline about how this village works. What's okay, what's not okay, what are the laws, what's good, what's shameful, what's just, and you've all constructed this together. And you all play your parts. At some point, when somebody says, wait, we're living in a bubble of our collective narrative as a family, and I'm going to go out. There's a wonderful painting by Nicholas Roerich. Nicholas Roerich is a Russian painter, and he paints a lot about the Himalayas and such. He's got these gorgeous paintings. And one of them is a village, and there's a person on a white horse outside of the village, clearly deciding to leave the village and say, I'm going to go out and feel what's beyond this narrative of village. And I'm going to let go of this for a while and explore and expand and open. And then the story, this is Joseph Campbell's story of the hero's journey. That ultimately, when we move through what he calls the pit of despair, the difficulty and such, we come out of that as more whole, more true, more alive, less addicted to the narrative. But a big part of the journey is the coming home. So this rider on the white horse does go out and discover, but then they come back. And the advantages, the responsibility perhaps is, or the opportunity is not to come back and fall back into, okay, I'm back and I'm just going to come back to, it's to say, folks, we don't have to live this way. And just to be different. So if you're in your explorations, your discovery, your awakening, find yourself outside of the walls of the village the family has built. It's an inspiration to the village. There's others in the village that start to go, you look like you're starting to have some fun out there. Like you're no longer playing by these rules, and it looks kind of fun.
Uh-huh.
And maybe the whole village just starts to drop the walls and expand out and be more free. Is that kind of the experience?
Oh, for sure.
Totally.
Yeah.
Oh, I feel the same way.
Yes.
I find as I go through what I've been going through, and I'm on a journey to find my authenticity, and the right people stay around.
Mm-hmm.
The right people. You really find out their truth too. you know, towards you, and whether they can accept what you're doing or find it as an inspiration.
Mhm.
So it's been an interesting year, I have to say, for myself.
For sure,
But
for sure.
So keep going with the inquiry and just who are you?
right,
Because one of the things that drops away, it's beautiful, is the comparing.
It's true.
exactly.
Because when we really merge, when the droplet merges into the oneness, there is no comparing
There's no
anymore.
comparing.
It's just you can, I want to say you can think of, this is what a lot of people are doing, and it can be valuable, but they're working on the new narrative that says, it doesn't matter what you think of me.
Right.
And they're trying to, okay, I've got to get this right. I've got to drop the old sense of, I was hurt by what you think of it. And I'm trying to create a new construct that says, no, I am a persona now. I'm a droplet that no longer cares what you think of me.
And it gives you such a sense of freedom. We were talking about that on
Yeah.
the trail today.
It gives you a sense of freedom, but ultimately the real freedom is drop the me
True.
that has any sense of, I don't care what you think of me. I'm constructing a new me that doesn't care.
Yep.
Mm-mm.
Right.
Drop the
That's
meanness
me.
altogether.
And then you don't compare and you don't think about it.
Right.
No, because why would the one pure consciousness,
Right.
it just loves. It doesn't have any sense of me that can be hurt, or me that cares, or me that's having to effort to let go of how much this hurts when my family doesn't. The me has to ultimately go away. And it doesn't stay away. It's just that it takes its rightful place. The ego body is humbled into not being the lead.
Mm-hmm.
Because we still work with and deal with and act in the world, in the conditional world, as a seemingly separate self.
Right.
So what happens is, ultimately what's happening is, we no longer are assessing everything relative to the narrative, relative to the story.
Mm-hmm.
We're just experiencing everything as liberated, unencumbered consciousness. And the ego says, but if I am just unencumbered one consciousness, I lose me. And the answer is, yeah. Yeah, you don't need me so much, at least to be forward, to be such the forward presence. It can then be the, oh yeah, I take this vehicle with me and it experiences and it relates and it speaks. Oh, there's a wonderful phrase I heard last night. Let me know. Let me see God and let God be in my eyes.
Oh, cool.
Let me hear God and let God be my ears. Let me speak of or to God and let God be my mouth. I still exist. It's still Chess's mouth and ears and eyes, but it's now just a vehicle which is infused with God instead of infused with the story. Let the story empty, let the narrative empty, and see what is already there, and let that be how we live life.
Mm-hmm.
But how will I relate? Oh, you'll relate quite
Trust me, you got this.
beautifully. Yeah. So that's a big one. Keep looking at, keep inquiring into. Okay, I just referenced a me, I just referenced an I.
Right. Watch your vocabulary.
Who is that?
Mm-hmm.
There's very few people I speak to who are in any form of a angst or struggle or trying to figure something out. And if I ask, how much stillness is there in your life? That they don't go, yeah, thanks, not enough.
Right.
Right?
Right.
It's just natural. It's just, but the habit is to go find. To go see, okay, I can't be still. I'm trying to find peace. I'm desperately trying to find some peace.
Right.
The trick is not to add the experience, the direct experience of pure consciousness and freedom, not to add that to the narrative.
Oh.
Oh, now my story has just been greatly enhanced because now I'm an awakened story.
And then you lose it.
Exactly. We can create bigger stories, we can create bigger droplets, we can create a bigger sense, of more loving sense of self.
Right.
But as long as it's still, so long as the identification is still with the individuated narrative of self, then we're not really free to be who we really are, which is the one absolute. I think it just feels really audacious sometimes to the ego to go, wait a minute, I'm the one absolute? I can't be because I've got shit to do. I got stuff to do. Yeah, so do it. Just do it as the one absolute. And like that guide. It moves through everyone differently. One person wants to sing at the top of their lungs as that. Another person wants to sit still in a cave as that. Another person wants to paint or teach or arrange flowers or dance or hike or whatever it is. But let's get our narrative out of the way because it's really getting in the way. It's the veil. And it gets in the way of the one consciousness being able to fully wake up to itself so that it can play as one consciousness, expressing itself authentically through us. Whew. So it ain't going to happen without discipline.
No.
It may. But devotion, discipline, practice, and honest inquiry, true investigation. Because if you want to know the truth of anything, look at it.
Mm-hmm.
Biologist, a linguist, an anthropologist, any gist. Constantly looking, picking apart. What's the reality of this thing? Oh, the smallest thing in life isn't just an atom. It's more than that. It's, there's parts to it. Oh, break those parts down. It's constantly investigating, looking, peering, exploring. Same with us. There's a joke about that. Why can't you trust an atom? Because they make up everything.
I'm going to be laughing about that one all day long.
But that's what it just finally blew my mind. It's like, oh my God, I'm navigating my entire life from a densely constructed image of self that I've been building up my entire life, based on really bad programming.
Based on very bad programming.
And then I have an experience in life and I test it against this bad programming and it spits out a result and says, yep, indeed you are not safe. And I say, great, add that to the construct.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
If we're really ready to be done with that, we can be done with that.
Yeah. But like you said, devotion.
Yeah, devotion and practice and inquiry. Keep asking, where am I? Where is this? Keep coming to that insanity and going, wow, that's right. That's been my idea of self all along.
Yeah.
Okay, so given that, all right, I've got that. If that's not me, what is aware of that? What is aware of this? Eternal, unchanging. What is the unchanging nature of being aware of all this temporary coming and going, living and dying? The analogy that I love is that you're the window looking out on the weather. The weather changes. Oh, look, spring came, winter came, fall came, summer came, rain came, drought came, all this came, and I'm witnessing it. The window doesn't change. The window is stable, it's solid, it's true, it's the isness. It's the open sky, and the clouds pass, and the rain passes, and it doesn't get attached to, oh, maybe if I attach to this cloud, it'll take me to freedom.
I am.
Oh, I am freedom. These are experiences that pass. That's why we say this. It's where is it? It's the truth of being. Is it how distant is it from you? There is no distance. There's no distance. I'm already that. I've been attached to the narrative, and it's been the veil. Lift the veil. What is there? Initially, you may not see it or feel it or experience it grandly or divinely, but keep doing that. Keep lifting the veil, keep lifting the veil, keep lifting the veil. And more, this comes into focus. This just comes into view. This just comes into being. And as soon as you say, yay, I've arrived, beautiful, keep doing it. And the next day, oh my gosh, how did it just get even more beautiful?
Right. For later day.
Yeah. Beautiful. Anyone else have anything to share? Okay. Love the isness. Namaste.
Namaste.
Mm.